G'day and welcome back for another Space Engineers tutorial. Today we're going to be taking this ramshackle collection of blocks and turning it into something that resembles an actual base. We're going to be doing a bunch of things to make this feel like it's a real place that we want to come back to. We're going to be building upon this platform that was built in the first tutorial and utilizing the resources that were collected with the mining ship that was built in the second tutorial. Because this is going to involve the building of a fair amount of stuff, we're going to be doing a fair bit of welding and maybe even a fair bit of grinding. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to upgrade my tools. At the moment, we are equipped with the most basic of tools and we can get some slightly better ones using the basic assembler. To do that, what we need to do is transfer our tools into the inventory, because if we look at the production menu and go to our tools tab, you'll see that these enhanced grinder, enhanced drill, and enhanced welder require the tool itself and some cobalt. Order up one of each of those. And using the cobalt we previously collected, it'll produce those. Let's grab them out of the assembler, and then we'll put them on our hotbar. Right click to clear the old tools off those first three slots, then click character tools on the left, and we can add these back with right click into those same three spots. Now we have slightly better tools. The next thing I want to do is start laying out my platform. I'm going to be building a fairly large platform. You don't need to build this large, but I like to build this large to begin with, as it makes it much easier to make something decorative and interesting if you've got the space to work with. I'll also be welding things up as I go, which you don't need to do. I'm doing that mainly for demonstration purposes, as I find it makes it easier to see what I'm doing. So I'm going to order up a bunch of steel plate, just ordered up 500, and that'll hopefully get us started with enough to build this platform. The platform I want to build is going to come out this way. It's going to be fairly large, so we'll build it first connected off this. We want to try and snap the blocks that we place to an existing part of our grid as much as possible to ensure we don't accidentally split this into multiple grids, because that's going to make things not quite work properly and cause some issues that are a little bit annoying to sort out, really. I'm going to go 6 blocks out here like this. In this section, I've used the 2x1 slopes, the base, and then the half-light armor block to make this look a little bit more like a bridge. I've left these blocks as full because I plan to replace these conveyors in a moment. So they'll be replaced with these reinforced blocks here. And as they're full blocks, I thought it might look nicer if we stick with the full blocks there. But I'm going to lay out a platform that is 7 blocks by 13. Oh, it's fairly large, but it should give us plenty of space for activities and all the blocks that we need. If I were to cut this conveyor line right now, we would end up with 2 separate grids because there's nothing connecting this platform to these wind turbines except for that conveyor line. So I'm going to make sure that there's something in there before I get rid of this. And what I'd like to do is make a little pathway for me to be able to walk down from this platform down to where these blocks are. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to place a floor height, making sure this is snapping to the existing grid here. Don't want to accidentally put this in the ground and create something new there like that. It's not particularly helpful. And I'm also avoiding using local grid alignment mode because this can sometimes create an extra grid anyway, even though it looks like it's snapping properly. So we're going to have free placement mode and make sure it's snapping to the blocks that are already there. And we'll create a little bit of a ramp down here. And with that in place, we now have another connection to the turbine tower to ensure that this doesn't become 2 separate pieces when we grind those conveyors out to replace them with something that suits it a bit better. So I'm now safe to remove these. I'm going to take them out and replace them with these reinforced conveyors. These can be a bit tricky to get lined up properly. So what I like to do is place it on a block above, make sure the 2 conveyor ports are in the right spots where I expect them to be, then move it into place. Because you can't really see once it's in that spot that it's in the correct orientation. Same with this curved one. I want it around this way with that crosshatch part down, and I want it all the way spun around there. So we've got 1 port there, 1 port there, which is correct. Put it in. And then lastly, we'll replace this one. And we can confirm that I've reconnected it properly because we've got the green lights on the conveyors. With that done, the next thing we're going to do is build a branch off this conveyor line to go to a cargo container. Because with this miner, it can kind of fill up our existing cargo really quickly. With just a single small cargo container, we can actually end up with it being full in kind of 1 or 2 loads. It really doesn't take us very long. So what we're going to do is we're going to get a big cargo container so that we can collect as much as we need to and not really worry about our storage for quite some time. I'm going to cut this part here and put it in a T-piece like this. To make it easy to see where we're going to, let's place down the large cargo container. This thing is, as its name says, large. This is a 3 by 3 by 3 cube. it has conveyor ports on all sides. So it doesn't really matter which way you orientate this, but you may notice there's a little keypad on it and that has numbers on it. So if you're someone who's a bit detail oriented, you may want to make sure that that's the right way up if it's going to upset you. I'm going to place this right on the corner, and then I'm going to build this conveyor line to attach to this port that's on the side here. These squares that you can see, they are where the ports are on this block. So it's quite easy to see on this one where they are on the initial build state. There we go. I'm going to weld all of this up, and then I'm going to take my mining ship out and go and collect some more materials. So when we dock to the base, we can have a look at the inventory of our ship by going to show only inventories of the current ship here. And we can see that we've got a bit of iron ore in here. It'd be really nice if this was automated in terms of getting out of the ship. If this docking point is just for the mining ship, we never want materials to go into it, we just want them to go out. So what we can do for that is use a sorter. If we cut a conveyor out here, and then under our conveyor cube here, we can find a sorter, making sure when we place it that the arrow is pointing away from the connector that the mining ship is hooked up to. Place that in there, weld it up. And in doing that, we've actually fixed up a little mistake that I made in setting up the event controller for our miner. If we have a look in the event controller, you can see that on the 5th hotbar, I've got us turning off the connector. I should have had us turning off the sorter, because with the sorter still on, it was still able to pull stone from our base and shove it into this connector whenever we were hooked up, meaning that every time we disconnected, it dumped down a bunch of stone onto the deck. And now we can set up the sorter on the base. We're going to hop in the cockpit of our mining ship, which means everything that shows up white is part of the mining ship, but everything that shows up a different color is in a connected grid. So we know that everything that is orange is part of the base, which means we know this sorter is the one we're looking for. So let's go rename this to conveyor sorter miner dock, and we're going to set this to drain all. We're not going to worry about any filter mode or anything like that, because there are no components or anything we need to leave on the ship. We just want to drain everything. You can see that our ship is now empty. If you find that this single sorter isn't emptying your ship as fast as you would like, in my case it's been perfectly fine, but if you're finding that it's a bit slow, you can actually make this happen faster by either putting more sorters down in parallel, so I could push them into the floor here and build additional conveyor lines to go to them, or we can actually run them in series. In series, they will still make this empty faster, so set up like this, that will actually drain twice as fast. I hop into the control panel, make sure I grab that sorter as well, call it miner dock to give it the same name, and set it up to drain all with no filter. And the reason they can work in this setup just as fast as they could if they were running in parallel, the way it looks like when we're watching an inventory and seeing it be drained across, is that they grab from one side and they push to the other, ignoring the other sorter. So they don't push from one sorter to the next, then push from that sorter to the base, it's push from ship to base. And that's both of them doing that at the same time. So now our large cargo container has a bunch of nickel and a bunch of iron in it, because it's been pushed out of our miner. The next thing we're going to do is build our assembler. First I'm going to place a conveyor on our cargo port, and then let's add our assembler to our hotbar. Then before we build it, it's worth taking a bit of a closer look at the assembler block. It has a cargo port at each end of the block, and it also has a cargo port on two sides of the block. But in addition to those cargo ports, it has a new type of port we haven't looked at yet, which is upgrade ports. It has 8 upgrade ports. There are 2 on all of the sides that I am showing you right now, which means there are upgrade ports on the exact same spot as those cargo ports. You might notice on the cargo ports here on the side, there's a small square in the middle. That small square is not present on the ones on the end. That means it's both a cargo port and an upgrade port. And we'll be getting onto those upgrade modules shortly. So let's place this to ensure that our conveyor port is aligned. I'm going to place it long ways like this. That's going to give us room for those upgrade modules later. And we're going to weld this up. To make it nice and easy to get all the parts, right click on the conveyor tube, right click on the assembler, middle mouse to grab what's already been made, and shift middle mouse to put the rest into production. Wait for those to get done. It's going to take a little bit of time because building 160 computers is a little bit on the slow side. And there we go, all the computers are made. Middle mouse to grab all the bits. Well, grab what I can carry anyway. And this will unlock a few blocks that we can make. One of the critical ones that this unlocks is turrets. When we look at the production window and look at our assembler, we can see that it has a whole lot of things to produce. There are 21 different components here, 5 of which are new compared to the basic assembler. That's the thruster component, the reactor component, the gravity component, the medical component, and the superconductor. We're going to be looking at the last two of those in our builds today. The other thing to note in this production menu is that we now have these two options up here, where we have large blocks and small blocks. In here, we can find a block and order up all the components for that block. We don't need to go through the build planner to do this. So, for example, I know I'm going to be building a lot of conveyors, so I can search here and search for conveyor, and I can queue up the components for several conveyor blocks by just clicking on them. You can, with these, also control click to do 10 times, or shift click for 100, or control shift click for 1,000 of each. I don't want that much. I'm just going to control click for 10. We may well need more than that, but this will be a good start to have this producing while I'm doing other things. While that assembler's making a bunch of things, let's go have a look at our survival kit. When we walk over to where we moved our survival kit to in order to protect it from my driving, as well as yours if it's as reckless as mine, but my driving, you might notice that the survival kit no longer provides us with any gases. Our hydrogen does not go up when we try and recharge from here or when we try and get our health back from here. If I walk around to my respawn pod, you can see why we're able to get hydrogen from our survival kit on our rover when it was on here, because it was connected to this small hydrogen tank, which does still have hydrogen in it. So we were able to still collect hydrogen by getting into our cockpit and having it refill us, or by putting a bottle into this tank directly to refill the bottle. If you don't have a bottle and you'd like a bottle, you can go to your assembler, click on the production menu, click on equipment, and you can see the bottles here to produce them so that you can have a bit more capacity for flying around and not run out so quickly. But it might also be nice for our survival kit at our base not to be tucked around in a corner and to have a hydrogen supply of its own. To do that, what we're going to do is we're going to add an O2H2 generator, which is going to be able to turn ice into hydrogen and oxygen. We don't really need the oxygen here, but if you're in a situation that you do, that's what it's for. So we're going to search O2. I'm going to right click on this to add it to my hotbar, and we're going to press R to switch to large grid and have a look at the large grid block. The large O2H2 generator has 4 conveyor ports, one on each of the long sides and then one on each of the ends. So what we're going to do is we're going to line this up so that it's attaching to our assembler with one of these conveyor ports pointing downward, because that's going to make it easier for our survival kit to get connected. So we'll place that there and we'll get this welded up. And when you weld this up, you'll also unlock some new blocks, which will include the tanks that we're about to build. But before we build the tanks, let's add a little curved conveyor tube here. And now I'm going to move my survival kit over here. And as always, remembering that when we grind down our survival kit, we're grinding down our one respawn point, so be careful when you're moving it, and we'll go place it immediately attached to that conveyor. Add the survival kit to our hotbar, and there we go. Survival kit's there. Now we can go and grab our mining ship and go and collect some ice. Conveniently, there's a large ice lake right near this base. Lock down. Watch all the ice get drained out super quickly. And we're almost empty. Doesn't really take long at all. There we go. All the ice has been drained out by those sorters. And this now means, if I let my jetpack run down a little bit so we can actually see the effect, this now means if I go to my survival kit here, I can press F on it and my hydrogen gets restored. We can also access this O2H2 generator and put our bottles in here to get them filled up by the ice. Now that we've got the O2H2 generator and we've got some ice on the base, let's make some tanks to store some of this. I'm going to add both an oxygen and a hydrogen tank off the side of these conveyor ports here. We don't strictly need the oxygen tank, given that our current environment is oxygen rich, but we're going to build it anyway because this may prove useful for demonstrations down the line. So I'm going to place a small oxygen tank there and a small hydrogen tank there. If we access these tanks now, you should see that they start to fill because our O2H2 generator is using the ice that's in its inventory and converting it into these gases. If we run out of that ice, this hydrogen tank is still going to be able to fill our suit from our survival kit. But in order to fill our hydrogen bottle, what we're going to need to do is fill it from this tank. To fill a hydrogen bottle from a tank, you need to go to the control panel, find the tank, and select auto refill, or if there are bottles in its inventory, you can click the refill bottles option. Personally, I have never had a situation where I didn't want it to refill bottles, so I just always enable auto refill. Then you can just drag your bottle into the tank and it will fill up. Drag it back into your suit. Now, if we head back to our survival kit, this is kind of a slow way for us to get power. We have to hold this for quite a bit of time to get our suit to fill up. There are two options that can do this faster. The first we're going to look at are these refill stations. There are two versions of the refill station. There's the full block version, which has a bunch of conveyors around it on all sides, so it's pretty easy to fit in most places. These are quite cheap to build. They require a bit of cobalt, but nothing else fancy. And these will be able to refill your power very quickly, and your suit's O2 and hydrogen if those are available on the conveyor network they're attached to. But they will not be able to heal you the way that the survival kit can. There is another block that can do the healing, the speedy refilling, and allow you to change your suit, and that is the medical room. We're going to get rid of this refill station and search for medical room. Add that to our hotbar, and this block is something we're going to try and build today. To build this, we need to have 15 medical components. That's the special component in this. If we have a look at our survival kit, we currently have 3. Going to the production menu for our assembler, we can see that medical components require silver. Silver is one of the special resources that cannot be refined by our basic refinery. It's alongside gold, uranium, and platinum that require that proper refinery. So that's what we're going to build next. And that's going to be the biggest thing we're going to build today. It requires a lot of components. So I'm going to go to hotbar number 3, and I'm going to find refinery. I'm going to add this to my hotbar. The refinery is a very large block. It is 2x2x4, which can make it somewhat awkward to place. It also has 4 conveyor ports, 1 on each of these sides, and 1 on the top, and 1 on the bottom. If you're using the DLC refinery, it does not have the conveyor port on the bottom. It has the top and the 2 sides. Much like the assembler, the refinery also comes with these small yellow ports, the upgrade ports. For the refinery, these are all on the back, and they don't overlap with any conveyors. I'm going to place this down. If you're finding it awkward, it can be easier to place these while flying to see that you're putting it down where you want it to. I'm going to put it just here. And then I'm going to start building the conveyor toward this, but I'm not going to build it the whole way. I know that the conveyor port is down the bottom here because when I was having a look at the model, you can see the conveyor port's right there. So I'm going to put a curve on the top, put a T-piece here, and then put a curve in here. And then I'm going to stop because I'm going to do something that's going to make welding up this refinery a heck of a lot easier. This thing requires 1,200 steel plates, 40 construction components, 20 large steel tubes. This is a lot of trips back and forth to the inventory to collect the parts to build this thing. Instead of doing that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make my base build it for me. Again, back to our third hotbar and search for welder. There are block welders. So we can add that to our hotbar and we can build one of these instead. The block welder has 3 conveyor ports. Make sure that it is aligned to the conveyor we're using, and make sure the pointy end, where those 2 tips are, is pointed at our refinery and really right up against it. Make sure it is touching the refinery. We're going to place that there, and I'm going to weld these blocks up. With our welder finished, I'm now going to access the control panel, go to the production menu, find my assembler, go to large blocks, search for refinery, and I'm going to tell the assembler to make all the parts needed for a large refinery. Like so. Then I'm going to go back to my control panel, make sure I've got my welder selected, and I'm going to turn it on. Now do be careful. That red signifies that this is hot and it will hurt. But you can see that this is now slowly filling up in steel plate as the assembler produces it. It's also dragged all of the other components to it. This is a nice little tip you can use for building things that might be large or that you may not have all the parts for yet, because I can leave this welding up with whatever I have available and go and collect more iron if I've run out, go and collect more ice, whatever it is I need to do while waiting for this refinery to get built rather than having to actively engage with it. But as I mentioned, do be careful. Standing next to the welder hurts. I might get my health back, just in case I accidentally do that again. Once this is finished, we can just remove this welder and put the conveyor line in to connect up the refinery. Since I know I'm going to need some silver in order to make our medical room, I'm going to go and collect that while this finishes up. And there we go, the refinery is finished. So I can grind this down now, grab out the bits I need for the conveyors, put 2 straight conveyor pieces in here, and with this in place, that refinery is now going to pull some of our resources. When we look at the refinery, we can see that it's got iron in it. This has pulled iron into it from the connected cargo container. Refineries will always pull first from the nearest cargo container. In this case, that's my large cargo container, and it will also pull from the top left, progressing down. So if I wanted these to be pulled in a different order, I could move my silver up to the front, and when this is finished processing this iron, it will automatically grab the silver next. Similarly, if I wanted nickel to be processed first, or if I didn't want the nickel to be processed, I can move it down the line. And there we go, it's automatically pulling the silver first because that's the first in the queue. And that's going to be more than enough silver to be processed, so let's move it to the back of the queue now and put the iron up first. Then we can head back to our production window. Let's search for large blocks, and let's search for medical room. And order up all the bits for that. And with that done, we can now take a look at upgrade modules for both the assembler and the refinery. We go into the refinery, we can see in the control panel, it says its refine speed is 130%, its yield rate is 100%, and its power efficiency is 100%. If we look at our assembler, it says that its production speed is 100% and its power efficiency is 100%. So a standard assembler draws 560 kilowatts of power, and a standard refinery does the same. But we can modify this. And the way we do that is by using these modules. The first here is a speed module. This increases the processing speed of both assemblers and refineries. There are power efficiency modules. These will reduce the power requirements of both assemblers and refineries. And yield modules. These only work on refineries, and what they do is increase the amount of ingot you get per unit of ore that you put into the refinery, which effectively makes it both faster to produce ingots and more power efficient to produce ingots, but not by as much as the speed and power efficiency modules. If we have a look at the back of these upgrade modules, you can see that they have those same upgrade ports on them, and they can cover either one or two of those ports. They will have half the effect if they only cover one. So for example, if I take this speed module and I place it on the assembler like this, we can go into its control panel and see that it now has a production speed of 200%. If I only cover one of those ports, and we go into the control panel, we can see that I only have 150%. I only get half the benefit. I could get the rest of it by placing another upgrade module like this, and we're back at 200%. Similarly, you are not restricted to a single type of upgrade module on each of these blocks. If we wanted to put a speed module on here, we can have a look at the assembler and we can see that increased production speed, but we also see this increased max power usage. If that's a bit too expensive for our tastes, we can then get a power efficiency module and put that on there. And now we get power efficiency and increased production speed. So our power efficiency is 150%. So we're only increasing from 560 kilowatts to 749, but still retaining that full increased production speed. So you can mix and match these however you like. For the assembler, the most common setup that you will see and that you'll likely use is covering the whole thing with speed modules. This means that it works as quickly as 5 assemblers would without these upgrade modules. With that kind of production speed though, you are going to use a lot of power. One of the reasons that I think this is the most common way to set up an assembler is that if you need more power, you just build more power, and this assembler facilitates that by building the components quickly. So you can just add more wind turbines, solar panels, or whatever you're using to your base in order to power that fully upgraded assembler. With the refinery, as mentioned before, we have the speed, the yield, and the power efficiency modules to choose from. And when looking at these, before we even look at what they do, it's worth looking at what they're made of. Power efficiency modules, power cells are the special component. They're a bit bulky, but other than that, they're easy to make from basic materials that you can get from stone. Same with our speed modules. Nothing particularly fancy in there. Then we come to our yield modules. These, on the other hand, do have something fancy, and that is the 20 superconductors that they require, which means you've got to have access to gold first. Let's have a look at the different effects these modules have. If we have a look at our refinery, it doesn't start from a flat 100% across the board. The refined speed actually starts at 130%. Yield rate 100% and power efficiency 100% with 560 kilowatts of power used. If you're tight on power, you can get that 560 kilowatts down quite low by putting power efficiency modules across the whole thing. We're down to just 112 kilowatts. At this level, I could almost run 4 refineries off a single wind turbine most of the time. Or I could build more wind turbines and speed things up. If I've got access to a huge amount of ore and I just don't want to wait around till it's refined, which would typically be the case with something like stone, then I might want to put speed modules on here and make it go at 530%, which is 4 point something times the speed of a standard refinery. But it's going to cost us at 2.8 megawatts. But I think the most common setup people would have for their refineries would be using yield modules. And this is why. With a single yield module, we take our yield rate from 100 to 119%. What that means is, if I were to take those off and put 100 kilos of iron ore in, we will get 70 kilograms back. But if I put that first yield module on, that 70 kilograms is going to be increased to 83.2. And if I cover this whole thing in yield modules, you'll see that the yield rate is now 200%, which means space magic. Our 100 kilograms of iron ore is going to turn into 140 kilograms of iron ingots. So if you've got access to gold, this is probably the way you're going to go, and that's the way I'm going to go for my base because I do have access to gold. And now we can jump back to the survival world where I can actually build these things properly. So as mentioned, I'm going to go and add some upgrade modules to my assembler and my refinery, making sure that as I place the modules on here, their upgrade ports are going against the upgrade ports on the assembler all the way around, including the ones that are on those same spots as the cargo ports. And over to the refinery to put yield modules on all of its ports. Then we'll get all these welded up. To order these all up, our build planner has 8 slots available, which is convenient. We've got 4 of each of these. I can add them 1, 2, 3, 4 because they're identical. Now we've got 4 of those. Same with the speed modules. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then my build planner is full up. I can grab what parts I have, start welding up, and put the rest into production. And with that welded up, we now have a fully upgraded refinery, fully upgraded assembler, and the next thing to do is upgrade from a survival kit to a medical room. To do this upgrade, we're going to remove the survival kit and the conveyor tube to make room for the medical bay. Now yes, we did just place this, but I kind of wanted to show the options of how this could fit either with the survival kit or with the medical room. And then we can take a look at the medical room. This has a conveyor port on the top and a conveyor port on the bottom. These are the only points at which this attaches to the grid. So if you don't have a block either on the top or on the bottom, this thing will float loose. That is worth keeping in mind. But we're going to place this underneath our O2H2 gen over here so that it's going to pipe through there and have access to oxygen and hydrogen. Grab the bits I need from this conveniently located hydrogen tank right next to me so I don't have to run around very far to get this welded up. And there we are, we have a medical room. The medical room is fantastic for getting power back. This will recharge you from basically 0 to 100 in about 5 seconds. It's very, very quick. But the thing the medical room does that no other block does is allow you to change your suit. If you hop in here, you'd normally be able to see something, but we can't right now. We'd normally be able to change our suit. If you want to make that so you can, we can take this out, being careful as we grind it down to empty our inventory repeatedly because this does take more than one inventory load to grind down. And we can flip this O2H2 generator around, which is also going to give us an opportunity to take a look at something. When you've got enough ice, this will be constantly pulling ice into its inventory to try and turn it into hydrogen. And so if we grind this down, there's going to be a chunk of ice dropped on the ground. That's not really ideal. What we'd like to do is make sure that we can empty this and not have it fill. But if I go to my cargo and I drag this ice out, it's going to be pulled straight back in as soon as I pull it out. So I'm not going to have time to pull things out and then grind this down before it gets filled again. What we can do is go to the control panel. We can turn the block off and it'll stop pulling it. Or you can select this automatic push-pull and turn it off, and that will do the same. Now we can grind this down and flip it around without anything dropping on the ground. Making sure the conveyor port's on our right, and then back to putting down our med bay. But this time, like this. And with that like that, we can now actually see ourselves as we change our skins and as we change our color on our character. And with that, we've got our completed platform. We've got our medical room, our refinery, our assembler, all the things that we wanted on this platform. We've got our redundant basic assembler and refinery over here, which we will remove just as we removed the O2H2 generator, emptying them out and getting rid of those. I'm also going to get rid of this cargo container as I don't really need it either. With those out of the way, I can now connect the algae farms up to the rest of the cargo network. Put a junction in here at the bottom of the wind turbine tower, and then just the 2 pieces remaining to connect this up. Now that's connected, what I want to do from here is entirely aesthetic. It's the stuff to make this feel a bit more like a place that you'd actually inhabit. It'll be things like creating a parking spot for this rover. And one of the things that I really find is helpful when trying to make a space feel used, feel real, is human scale pathways. So that's using things like catwalks to create, even if you never use it because you're always using a jetpack, but to create visible paths to get to the places that you would expect a human to get to. That's one of those things that makes a place feel real. So I'm going to press P to open up my paint menu, select yellow, we'll continue with our battered skin. Then I'm going to create a path running from my mining ship over to my cargo container, because that's somewhere I'm going to go regularly, and a path over to my medical room. I'm also going to create a little path off to the side here that's going to go to my rover parking spot. And to make this landing space feel a bit more special, I'm going to paint around it, then take this dark grey and kind of color in this area beneath it. So if I control click, I can do a 3x3x3 cube, and now I've got a little dark grey landing pad. If you don't like the square look of this, if you want to round off a corner, what we can do is press Shift P to grab that white, paint that back to white, and then follow our path, grab some steel plate out of the cargo container, press Shift P again on the yellow, and we're going to use this light armor panel side, and we're going to round off each of these corners. Because to me, this is easily the best way to make it look like you've got 2 different paints on the one block. Look at that from above, I'm quite happy with that. Also got a paint down to go to the food processor. Something else that can be nice to bring more color to your base is to go and grab something. We'll go a bit of a rusty red orangey color. And I'm going to paint all of my conveyor lines. All the ones that are done as tubes. Everything else will stay white or whatever color it is that I've painted it to this point. But for the tubes, I'm going to color them something different because it just breaks up the monotony of this space pretty well. It's also a good excuse to put in extra conveyor lines. Sometimes I'll put in redundant ones just because they'll look nice. And then we'll get our parking spot for our rover. Whenever I'm creating a parking space for a rover or an access way for a rover, it's really good to take advantage of the existing fall lines in the terrain around you. So for here, making my access point to this parking spot be this slowly falling terrain, because that means I can get a really smooth transition onto the grid. Because unfortunately, this is our nicest slope otherwise, and that can be too steep for a lot of different rover designs that would otherwise be quite reasonable. So I'm pretty happy with how this looks, but how does it look come nightfall? Well, the answer to that is it's pretty dark. So we might want to add some lights as well. If we search in our G menu for light, there are 2 different light groups we can look at. There's the spotlight lights group and the interior lights group. These are actually 2 different types of lighting. The spotlights, more expensive from a computational perspective because they're point lights that actually cast proper shadows. Interior lights, they don't. They phase through walls, they do all sorts of weird stuff. But you can have a lot more of them before it starts to cause problems. I'm going to use lights from the interior light group because I think they're the ones that are going to look best on these paths as a bit of pathway illumination. With those welded up and my suit lights turned off, you can see that they're not actually doing all that much. That's because the default settings are quite short. Now we could go into the control panel here, or we could turn around, run back to our ship that is connected to this base, and do it from this cockpit, where, because we've got third-person view, we can see all these lights as we adjust them. If we then open up our control panel and search for light, we can select all of the lights that are orange because they're the ones on the base, not on the ship, and we can adjust their settings. So we can adjust their radius up to something around 10 meters. You can even go all the way up to 20 if you really want to spread the light as far as you like. But this is kind of handy for being able to see. If your menu is not quite as transparent as mine, you can go to the options menu, go to game, go to UI, and then you can adjust your UI background opacity and HUD background opacity. Mine is set here just a bit above 50%. A couple of other things I like to adjust with these lights is I like to turn the intensity down a bit, because once you start getting a few extra lights in this area, the intensity at 4 is a little bit bright. If you want to set a specific value on one of these sliders, you can control click on it and type in a value. I also like to just soften the harsh white a little bit, because particularly when you're using a battered armor texture like this, I find that the yellowing of the light fits in with the whole theme a lot more nicely. And with that, we have a base. The next thing that I want to do on this is build a bit of a greenhouse, potentially also including an auto harvesting setup as our first look at anything with a subgrid, which is pistons, rotors, hinges, and the like. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments and I'll do my best to answer, but I'll be back with some more of this very soon, and I will see you then.